Happy Thursday. We are live on Little Nessie channels. It's happy hour. It's Thursday at just after 3 p.m. and Ron Stowers and myself go live every week, and we talk usually for about an hour. So thanks for joining us, whether you're joining us now live on socials or watching this later. Hi, Mom, if she ever watches this. She usually likes to see McKenna come on camera, so figured I'd throw a shout out to my mom. But happy Thursday to you, Ron. Cheers.
Cheers. Happy Thursday to you.
We'll kick this thing off right. There we go. All right, so Ron and I are going to chat for about an hour. We've got a handful of topics. We're going to be talking about housing, mortgage, real estate, AI, Lego people, and a whole bunch more. We'd love to see some comments. So if you're watching this on Facebook, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on YouTube, throw us a comment, and we'd love to interact with you. And McKenna usually throws up some notes from the producer, some interesting stats, facts, whatever. So we've got a handful of things to talk about. But biggest thing that's different this week is Ron is actually in his house. Ron, you're in your office.
Woohoo! Happy to be here.
Yeah, you've been on the road quite a bit.
I certainly have. I just have a little bit of more road work to do, and then I'll be here for a couple months.
A couple months. I'm like, I've got one trip coming, and then I'm home for 24 months. Ron, you are quite the traveled man. Sometimes I'm jealous of you, and then other times I'm like, I would not want to be gone from my house for 7 weeks out of the last 8, but that seems like it's been your life for the last 9 months, 12 months or so.
Yep, I'm lucky. I'll take that. I'm lucky. It's fun.
You are.
It's good.
You are. Blessed and cursed at the same time. Well, let's get to this week's topics. I've got a From the Gut this week where I'm talking about AI. And there was a video that was put out a few weeks ago, and made a bit of a splash, and I've got some thoughts on it in your typical From the Gut monologue style. And then we've got 3 main topics that we usually spend about 8 minutes on. Let's take a look at those. Ron?
Yeah, Dave, we covered this last week, and we covered it from the loan officer perspective. How often the consumer picks the first loan officer. Today, we're going to jump into the data with real estate agents, and it's surprising, I think. So I'm looking forward to that topic.
All right. Next, main topic number 2.
Yeah, this has to do with the recent MBA data coming out on IMB profitability as well as the expense stack. There's going to be some really surprising data there.
And last of the main topics.
This speaks to which states allow homeowners to have the most residual income, and it's a product of the cost of living, and so we'll kind of debate what that means and why it matters.
Yeah, and then we've got, I believe, I don't remember, it's either 3 or 4 rapid fire topics that we'll spend a few minutes on each. But without further ado, let's get to the first part. You're From the Gut. All right. So this week, again, like I said, talking about AI seems like a pretty consistent topic, but not usually topics for From the Guts. But I want to talk about AI, but not from a usual angle. Not the AI is taking over the world angle, not the robots are coming for your job angle. Not which AI tools are better than others. Should I be using Claude? Should I be using ChatGPT? I'm talking about something simpler and honestly, something a little bit more uncomfortable. A couple of days after U.S. Special Forces rescued the American pilot trapped in the Iranian mountains after his plane was shot down, a short film went viral on X. you shouldn't call it a film. It was more like a trailer, but that it went up almost, it felt immediately. It was called Rescuing American Pilot in Iran. And it created the entire thing like some little bizarre Lego action movie. It had the typical yellow plastic soldiers, it had explosions, helicopters flying through mountains. It even had a Lego Donald Trump. And people were losing their minds over how fast it happened because 2 days earlier it was a headline and now it was a film, not a news clip, not a recap, a short trailer for a movie. And one comment underneath it said, it said, Hollywood will never be able to keep up with this. And honestly, that comment stuck with me because whether you like AI or hate it, that part is true. The speed of execution just changed forever. I can't get my words out this week, Ron. The speed of execution just changed forever. Something that used to take a studio, a budget, a production crew, weeks, maybe months, now takes one person with taste, with tools and speed, and it takes them no time at all. And that's where I think most people are asking the wrong question. They keep asking, will AI replace me? And I think that's the wrong question. The stereotypical line that we've heard over and over from people on stage is AI won't replace you, but someone who uses AI will. But I think a slightly better way to put it is this: will someone better at AI than me outperform me who uses AI? Because AI didn't suddenly make untalented people brilliant. It made talented people faster. That's the real shift. Average people will use AI to make average things faster. Exceptional people will use AI to build things that used to be impossible. That's a very different conversation. I've talked about pieces like this before. When I talked about Mr. Beast and one of my other From the Guts, it wasn't really about YouTube. It was about obsession. It was about mastery, about someone pouring themselves into one craft so deeply that the scale became almost unfair. When I talked about the TV show Pluribus, it wasn't really about the show, it was about collective intelligence. What happens when knowledge compounds faster than individuals can keep up with. And when I talked about the yellow pages and direct mail, the point wasn't nostalgia, it was that channels change, tools change, the game keeps moving. This is the same thing. AI is not the story, adaptation is the story. And one part of this conversation that always gets interesting is Hollywood, at least for me, because actors and writers have been some of the loudest voices pushing back against AI. And I get it. If your livelihood depends on creativity, of course you're going to protect it. That makes sense. It's your livelihood. But I also have a little bit of a visceral reaction when people act like their industry should somehow be exempt. Because where was that same outrage when automation hit manufacturing? Or when software started replacing admin roles? When AI started changing coding jobs or putting them out of business, or design jobs or marketing jobs? A lot of industries have been dealing with this for years quietly without red carpets and interviews about it. So I think the healthier perspective is not why me, it's okay, now what? Because almost everyone is facing that question now. How do I navigate my career or even a new career in the face of AI automation? That's not solely an actor problem. That's an everybody problem. Loan officers, real estate agents, graphic designers, writers, developers, business owners, everyone. And the answer probably isn't fighting the existence of the tool, it's becoming better at the part of the tool that it can't replace: judgment, taste, discernment, and vision, because can AI can generate, but it can't decide what matters. It can write 10 captions for your social media post, but it can't tell you which one actually connects. It can make video, but it can't tell you necessarily if a story is truly worth telling. That still belongs to people, at least for now. That's why I don't think the new gap is effort anymore. It used to be that the hardest worker often had the edge. Whoever could outwork everyone else usually won. Now, effort, yes, still matters, but it's not enough, because the person with better vision and the right tools can now move 10 times faster. The new gap isn't effort, it's vision, it's taste, it's knowing what should exist before the machine helps you build it. I see tons of posts, whether it be images or videos that were obviously created by AI, and it's still no more interesting than their content was before AI. And honestly, I think that's why some people are excited about AI and some people are terrified of it. Excuse me, because AI exposes something different. It exposes whether your values was in the labor or in the thinking, whether you were building or just executing. And that can be the brutal realization, but it can also be an opportunity, because if you learn how to use it well, if you stop treating it like a threat and start treating it like leverage, you don't become obsolete, you become dangerous. And the people who figure that out first, they're going to create a gap that gets very hard to close, not because they're working harder, but because they saw it sooner. Ron, that's my from the gut. Any thoughts?
David, that was another exceptional effort from the gut. That was fantastic and really well thought out. I'm so impressed every time you do this. Every time you do it from the gut, I'm like, we should just let you keep going. Like, do 5 from the guts and call it a gut. But one thing that, a lot of things jumped out at me, David. But I would say the thing that I've been noticing about Hollywood, actors, songwriters, singers, they complain about AI, but it's the strangest thing. They use AI. They openly use AI for their own career, but they're somehow offended when somebody else uses it. And a great example was Justin Bieber at Stagecoach recently. And in fact, many of the performers use some form of AI on stage, even though they complain about it. And I guarantee you they use it in their music writing. And so it's a really weird hypocrisy happening right now in Hollywood, in my opinion. And you explained it perfectly, what AI can do, how it can make the great people better, and it can lift the mediocre. But you have to have your point of view to begin with. I mean, you have to bring something to AI, or else it's just AI. But David, I'm so curious to hear what McKenna thinks, because she's anti-AI, and I don't quite understand why. I just probably need to sit down with a case of banquet beer and hash this out with McKenna. But McKenna, what are your thoughts on this?
I feel like you don't want to hear my thoughts on this.
Oh, a road, everything David just said. But McKenna, it's crazy. It's like four of the top 10 songs in America are AI, openly AI. People don't care what it's generated from if it has the humanity they want in it. You know what I mean?
As soon as I learn that a song that I've heard is AI, I immediately blacklist it. It's gone.
Why is that? Just give us a quick thought on it, McKenna.
I will say, most of my stance comes from AI whenever it comes to creativity, whenever it comes to music or media, storytelling, that kind of thing. That's where I'm like, I don't want AI, I want human. And if I'm watching something from, like, say I read this amazing story and I really love it, but then I hear that it's either AI completely or somebody prompting it, it just makes me sad, because then I'm like, okay, well, it wasn't, sure, it was a human idea ish, but it wasn't them writing it. It wasn't them coming up with these ideas. It wasn't a human mind putting it all together. So I don't like it. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that everybody has to think the way that I do, but that's just how it immediately makes me feel. I just get sad and disappointed, and I don't like it anymore.
So you're not coming at it from the angle like the example that I gave where actors or creatives are mad because it's putting them out of a job.
I mean, I am upset that not just them, like, I'm sad for everybody that gets put out of a job. And, like, yes,
Right.
obviously, there's a long history of innovation putting people out of jobs. And, it changes the world. And so I'm not saying that, like, this is an evil and it should never happen. It's a part of life, it happens everywhere. But I understand why they're saying it. They don't want to lose their jobs. I wouldn't want to lose my job because of AI either. And they have a platform, so why shouldn't they speak about it?
All right. Valid.
All right, thank you for
Ron,
that.
all right.
Uh,
Let's move
no,
on.
we can pick this up another time. Your points are valid.
All right.
McKenna.
Yeah, I wanted to hear if the perspective was more just from a you prefer content that is created by humans versus the whole putting people out of a job, because those are two different perspectives. Because you can't be selective if you're not upset the coders or web coders are being put out of a job. If you're not upset about that, then you can't be upset if your industry is affected either. So anyhow, let's move on to our first topic. The first person to the consumer wins. Ron.
First person, the consumer wins. And David, we featured this last week, which was 80% of home buyers only speak to two lenders, and the majority will only speak to one lender, but 80% never speak to more than two lenders, and they almost pick the first lender every time. And so last week we talked about the implications of that, and it was the whole thing is the world's, if you're a salesperson in mortgage and real estate, it's not complicated. The first person to the consumer wins. So like we complicate the heck out of this, David. Like, oh my God, how do I build my business? What should I do? And oh my God, get to the consumer first. It's that simple. Get to the consumer first. And if you get to the consumer first, you win. And if you don't, you lose. It's really that simple. Now, what's changing is the top of the funnel is changing because the consumer used to go through the real estate agent or the builder and then trickle down to the loan officer. But now that consumer is coming to the real estate agent already with a loan officer, already pre-approved, or they're coming to that housing track already with a pre-approval in the hand. And so it's very hard then to try to fight upstream to try to beat the first person. So if we start looking at the data, a really interesting. This is from NAR's. I think it's generational trend report data. So here's the thing. On this NAR report, it's roughly 74.5% of buyers only interviewed one agent. Like they just went with the first agent. And it's true for sellers too, by the way. Very few interviewed two. Of course, fewer interviewed three, and nobody wants to work with people that interviewed four. But so that's that, and so that's surprising, and that hasn't really substantively changed in the last 20 years. And so if you're building your business, I just can't say enough. How do you get to the top of the funnel? How do you get to the customer first? That's all you should care about. I mean, that's what's going to determine your success is getting to the customer first. But David, let's look at some other data here from this, and then I want to get
Ron,
your guys' feedback. Yeah.
Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but the older the person is, the more likely they are to look at more agents, right?
No, it's the other way. And that, well, we didn't get the data for real estate agents, but the data for loan officers, if you were a boomer, 80% of boomers picked the first person they spoke to.
Yeah, I thought that's what I said.
I thought you said the
The
opposite.
ol- the older you are, the more likely you are to have less phone
Yeah.
calls.
Yeah, the fewer people you're going to pick. Now, there's also some rationale to this, David, because typically your first, contact might be by a referral or your past association. So it's not like somebody cold called you and you went with them. It's that you already had a warm relationship with that person, most likely. And so this is how on this chart here. Here's how people found the agent they work with. A little less than half it was referred by a friend or family. 15%, you work with the agent before. Dave, you want to know something interesting? This would be an interesting from the gut topic. When
Yeah.
interviewed, something like 85% of homeowners said they would reuse the agent they used in their last transaction, but they've forgotten their name or don't have their contact information.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? And so it's something it's around there. It's directionally true. Let's say 80, 85% would use their agent, but they don't know how to get a hold of them. They can't remember their name is. And then we look at this and only 15% actually did it, right? Which is interesting. And there's a whole bunch of opportunity there. But so you can see the way people are referred. But number one is friend or family. Very few with social media, 1% type of thing. Open house, 5% makes sense. Website, non-specific. But let's look at some other data.
Well, I wonder, Ron, if you don't mind me asking a question
Please.
there, that was specific to real estate agents, not loan officers?
This one is specific to real estate agents. Last week was specific to loan officers. And
Right. So I wonder, McKenna, go back a slide. I mean, I wonder how many, because that sounds use an agent that they had worked with before 15%. But I wonder how much, geographically that plays into, how many people move and that real estate agent, they either move out of state or a different city or whatever. So I wonder how much that skews that number.
yeah, David, what I find more fascinating, which I think will wrap our conversation up with this, is the data difference between selecting a lender and selecting a real estate agent. Because the referral, the how you found a loan officer is completely different than how you find a real estate agent. And there's a lot more internet search, a lot more AI search. It's different. And these aren't the same numbers. And then on those also is a lot higher. I used them before. But the other thing is, when you shop for a lender, it's more competitive. There's a lot more shopping for a lender than there is for a real estate agent, which is really surprising in the data. And maybe because this loan officers are so accessible online, as are their companies. But it's interesting the differences here. Now let's just look at some of the other data, and then David, we can extrapolate what this all means. I like these next 2 points because this is what the buyer said, the specific moments that shaped the things they cared about, right? And 54% said the agent pointed out features or faults they had to notice. And 45% said they negotiated a better contract. 44% said they provided a better list of service providers. And 35% said they negotiated a better price, which is all how they earn their commission and what makes them valuable. All those are very valuable things. And that's what buyers said. This is what I really valued. And now I think we have one more data point, if I remember. Yeah, and this is what they say that they want from that actual buyers want from their agents. They want help finding the right home. Notice how that's only 50% because they do so much shopping beforehand. There's a very high percentage of people already know the house they want. They just want the agent to help facilitate the purchase.
Right.
They want help negotiating the terms of sale. They want help with price negotiation. They want help with paperwork. It's really interesting, Dave. My experience in real estate. The number one service a real estate agent can provide, in my opinion,
What?
is managing their client's
Yeah.
emotions. Like that's,
You've told me
but
that
nobody would ever
before.
say, "Oh yeah, here's what I really value is them, taking care of my own chaos. Like I'm gonna bring chaos to the transaction. They gotta just harness that for me." So that's pretty interesting. So David, what do you get from this data, and how do you see it compares with last week's data?
I honestly thought, McKenna, pull up that last slide. I thought that slide would be inversed. The I thought the help with paperwork would be at the 50%. That might be different now with AI. I don't know. But I see that being the total inverse of what it is. That really shocks me because I mean, especially the finding the right home now with Zillow or the MLS or whatever. Just the access the general public now has to find homes, that would be the bottom of my list. I'm going to find them online and just drive around on my own and not have a realtor chase me around. So do you see it the same way?
Well, what's interesting, and finding the right home, that number is going to free fall because with now AI
Yeah.
embedded into
Right.
Zillow, Realtor.com, you can now conversationally speak to those platforms and say, here's what I'm looking for. And you can have a conversation with the AI tool who then can start making recommendations based on the conversation you're having, based on the texture of what you're looking for versus just the 3 or 4 data points you put in. And to me, they might be able to do that better than sometimes a real estate agent that may or may not have the perfect listening skills.
How big in the automotive world is Carvana? Do you know? I'm going somewhere with this. Gonna
Yeah, the
sneeze.
challenge with Carvana is just the complicated nature of used cars. So bless you, when there's a shortage of used cars and used cars get more expensive than new cars, then Carvana suffers. But if there's a healthy used car market, Carvana's killing it.
Yeah, I see kind of what AI is doing right now, with home search is going to be similar to what Carvana did for buying a used car.
Oh, I
Not that
totally
Carvana is AI, but it's going to have a similar effect.
I totally agree, David. Especially when you have now all sorts of 3D video that you can do online, and you can have conversational with different AI platforms. I totally agree with you, 100%.
Yeah, and with looking at loan officers last week versus real estate agents this week, I'm curious how the differences between the how someone chooses a real estate agent versus a loan officer, because for me it seems like a lot of consumers would basically we know that a lot of people shop rate, and so they choose loan officers based off not probably not a personality first. It's like they get on a phone call and like, what's your rate, or do you have this type of loan program? But it's very quantitative versus I'm thinking a personality probably plays into a real estate agent, someone selecting their who they'd want as their real estate agent more. So I think loan officers have it tougher.
Yeah, I think that the consumer just kind of equates the lending experience as very process oriented. And that the process
Yeah.
is similar from lender to lender, which is why I think they're more likely to shop. Or I think that with real estate agents, as you mentioned, it's much more local, and also the real estate agent has a stronger brand. Loan officers are still highly branded to their company, and so all that makes a difference. And then I think on the real estate side, because of the nature of the business, that they're a little bit more soft skills relational, and so they create more of a deeper relationship with the real estate agent, and so they're less likely to abandon them. The other thing is you can't, as a loan officer, I can do great service to a borrower and really treat them well, get them to the finish line, and then they can throw me overboard because they find somebody that has an interest rate that ain't lower. You can't quite throw your real estate agent overboard the same way. Contractually, it doesn't work the same
Right.
way. So you don't have the same
Right.
fidelity, and that could be part of the reason why.
Well, you could up until they made that change. Gosh, it's been what, a year now. What was that document you had to sign before selecting a real estate agent?
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
a
yeah.
buyer's agreement.
Yeah, but still, you sign it, and once you're under contract, you're under contract, right? Because the agent is under contract to perform, which is they get technically they can get paid for their services whether it closes or not because they performed.
Right. Right. We are over time on this topic. You want to move on?
Yeah, we're over time in the first two, so let's get with it.
Well, this that was our first, well, from the gut. Anyway, we had our producer yelling in our ears, "Move on, move on."
Producer McKenna, we just got to get our AI bot. So, David, let's bring up the chart and then let's start talking about it.
All
And
right.
this is from the NBA's chart of the week, and it's really from their data on lender profitability. And this chart isn't what there's going to be a hidden data point, which is going to be incredible. But here's what it says: the top 20% of net income drivers, right, have significantly lower expenses than the bottom 20%. Or put differently, if your profitability is in the bottom 20%, your expense stack is most likely $2,600 higher than the people at the other end, right? Kind of makes sense, right? You don't have the scale, you don't have the efficiency. And so you're spending quite a bit more. You're spending about 20% more on your expense stack. But here's the data, which McKenna, do we put the second slide up? I don't remember if we were able to capture this data. Oh, thank you. The top 20% of IMBs averaged 115 basis points in net income, when the bottom 20% lost 64 basis points. That is a gigantic
Wow.
spread. It's nearly 200 points from top to bottom. I know Dave Savage, Dave, if you listen to this, I know that you actually did a LinkedIn post and a podcast on this with single topic. I think you did with James Deitch. But so a 200 basis point spread, which is unbelievable. And then if this were to put it into perspective, the average profitability on Q4 last year was Q4 in 2025 was 21 basis points. And so there's this huge disparity. And David, I did a LinkedIn post on this. I think I did it Monday. And I was railing about, gosh, if you can't get scale, if you can't manage your expenses, you just can't compete, kind of thing. And that post wasn't incorrect. But then I did another post the next day on Tuesday saying, hey, I might have missed the boat on this because, and David, this is part I really look forward to your ideas on, but a big part of the expense stack is commissions. And here's what happens. If you're a company and you don't control the lead flow or top the funnel, that means your only competitive lever is comp. And so you're willing to pay your self-source loan officers more money because they're the only ones bringing the business. But if you're in a flywheel business that's bringing in a ton of lead opportunity, a ton of business, then you most likely are paying your loan officers less. And so you're lowering your expense. You're lowering your expense stack. So not only are you lowering it because you've created all sorts of scale, you've created all sorts of systems. Because you're scale, you can invest in technology, which gives you even greater efficiency. But then you can squeeze commissions down a little bit, and so you also have a lower cost factor. And then when I was writing about this, David, I was like, loan officers hate when they hear lower comp. They go, okay, I'm going to be marginalized. I'm not going to get paid what I'm worth. I'm going to get lower comp. And in my LinkedIn post, I compared it. I'm like, if you're a loan officer, would you rather do one loan a month for 120 basis points or 10 loans a month at 80 basis points, right? I'd rather be on a platform that lets me do more volume, and I get paid more. The company lowers its costs so that it can be more competitive. It's a win-win when scale actually drives volume and lowers costs. And that's what we're seeing. So this chart that we're looking at shows two things. Not only the expense stack, we can't ignore the role that commissions play in the expense stack, but why it can be a win-win for both the lender and the loan officer. David, what are your thoughts?
I've got more questions than thoughts, and that's usually what my responses are. If you take commissions out of it, what are the next biggest expenses?
Yeah, I mean, commissions are at least half of the expense stack. And then the next thing is other labor costs, your fulfillment costs, underwriters. No, tech comes below that. Your underwriters, processors, all that people soft cost is super expensive. Tech would come in next. You know what the most IMBs have mastered? It used to be things like occupancy was 20 basis points. Now it's probably 5. I mean, it's so low. It used to be marketing. You might even allocate some platforms up to 15 basis points. On a small platform, maybe 5 basis points. That's been pretty contained, and so the hard costs are getting cheaper. The soft costs are getting more expensive,
How does a small, like the bottom 20%, it seems like how does a small mortgage company, maybe $1 billion or under, it seems like it's getting harder for them to cross that threshold to go from a small to a medium-sized company. It's getting harder. What are the strategies that a company should take a hold of in order to get from that 700 million to a 1.5 billion or 3 billion or whatever? What are some strategies a company should kind of grab hold of?
Yeah, David, I actually don't think it's all that hard to go from 800 million to 1.5 or 2 billion. It's exceedingly hard to go from 2 billion to 5 billion. Like that's the hardest leap, is the 2 billion to 5 billion. And then from 5 billion, it's not that hard to build scale to get to 10 billion or 20 billion. It's interesting. Ron Lionheart was on the stage at the gathering yesterday. was being interviewed, and he's like, I don't think if I had to start today, I started as a 2-person shop. He goes, I don't think I could scale up the way I did in today's world, especially with all the capital requirements. He goes, I don't know if somebody can get in the business and do what I did. I just don't know if it's available to us today. And there's a lot of truth to that, but the hardest jump is the 2 billion to 5 billion. And here's what happens. It's the same thing with a loan officer, with a company or loan officer. What got you from point A to point B, say from 0 to a billion, isn't what gets you from a billion to 2 billion, right? And to get from 2 billion to 5 billion, you have to break the entire platform and start over, right? Because you can ham and egg it on that first A to B, but then you have to start building systems, and you have to start building departments, and you have to do all sorts of things that you didn't have to do before. And you bring things in-house instead of contracting out of house. And it's totally different. You exponentially grow the company, but it's at a massive cost, which makes it hard to be profitable. And then once you get over 5 billion, that's when you start to really scale and drive profits again, But
Gotcha.
the 2 to 5 is a tough jump.
Yeah. I remember, random story here, but it made me think of it back when I was working at Movement. I remember we had was it Admiral Mullen? He was the not chief of staff. What's the head of the military? What's that title? Anyway, Admiral Mullen came and visited. He spent the day with Casey Crawford, and Casey was trying to figure out how to grow the company from 2,000 employees to 5,000. Casey was just like, I just feel like that 5,000 employee number is gonna be the hardest, and once we hit that number, then it's just gonna be gravy from there, easy from there to scale. But Admiral Mullen, he said that for some reason, his experience through military and so on, that 10,000 number is the hardest number to reach for whatever reason. I don't remember, and I don't think this story is super relevant to this, but there's some magic number in whatever it is, like you said, and from there on, do you think it's easy for a company to get to that 5 billion? And once from there, it's relatively easy, or it just keeps on getting harder?
I think the hardest jump is 2 billion to 5 billion.
Yeah.
That's it's all,
And
it's all,
I guess employee count. Go ahead.
that's all part of 700 to 1.5. You have to completely recreate your platform, but you can even ham and egg it to 2 billion, but you go 2 billion to 5 billion, then you need to invest in all your departments. You really need to build the platform out. You need to build capacity out. It's a little, that takes a lot of effort. And a lot of times operators that built that $1.5 billion company don't have experience to build the platform necessary to get to the $5 billion company. And so
Yeah.
that's much harder. And also, you have to have a lot more capital. You can kind of go light on capital at $1 billion, $1.5 billion. You can go like with your minimum capital requirements. But when you start to scale above that, you have to have excess capital, which makes it very, very a lot more difficult. It's a different thing.
Yeah. And yet you also have to have a pretty awesome leadership team under
Yeah,
the CEO, a bunch of people that run their divisions like their own business, basically.
absolutely. Yeah, and you also, but by the way, got to make sure you have a model that's competitive and works. The model that you started with might not be the model that will take you to that next level.
Right, right. All right. Next, moving on.
Let's move on. Talking about moving on. We're
Let's
talking
move
about
on.
moving on. Yeah, let's just get right. So let's get right to the chart. This comes from Visual Capitalist. What it said. If we bring the chart up, I'll give you what it says. This is we crop the top off so you can maybe see a little better. But it's after expenses and taxes, how much money do you have left in different states? And so to give you an idea, you have the most, and let's just call that residual income because that's what we're used to in mortgage. But I think it's in Indiana, you have 35% of your take-home pay in residual income after all expenses are paid. That's housing, utilities, groceries, car, health, insurance, childcare, and this is based on a family of 4. So in Indiana, you have about 35% left. South Dakota's 35% left. Conversely, in Hawaii, you only have 9% left. They're the worst. In California, you have 11%
Wow.
left. And so there's a drastic difference. Now, here's the question, and this is where I took a little bit issue. If you were to read the entire article, the author seemed to insinuate that people with more residual income have a better quality of life. They definitely have a lower, cost of living, but a lower quality of life. And my counter argument is, okay, let's say that I build my dream house. I love it. I've raised my family there. It's my center of operations. And it was more expensive than I wanted it to be. And so it's eating up more of my income. But does that mean now I have a lower quality of life because I have things that I really enjoy? Like, doesn't necessarily flow through to me. And so that's one of my points. But it's interesting. And here's another thing. This is something. And I was on the phone with the loan officer today. I was coaching them a little bit, and they were in a market that they said, "Gosh, this market's just tough," and they are in a tough market in the geographic place they're in. And I'm like, "Okay, what have you thought about moving? Like, have you considered moving? Because you're not, in jail here. You can move to another market. Just like, people are trying to buy a home. And well, maybe your first home shouldn't be in Southern California. Maybe it needs to be in Alabama or Mississippi or another state, or Iowa or Indiana, right? Like, start someplace else, build equity if you can, if your job's mobile, right? And we have to remember that we're a country of migrants and wanderers. It used to be, even 10 years ago, 20% of people changed houses every year. 20% of people moved. Now it's down to 9%. But if we become a little bit more mobile, we could probably achieve a lot more. Anyway, David, what's your thoughts? I don't know how I got on a mini rant there.
Was the loan officer you talked to this morning, did his first name begin with C?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought I knew who you were talking about. I was gonna say it'd be a tough pill to swallow to move from where I thought who you were talking to move from where he lives to Alabama.
Yeah. No,
But
no.
I mean, I have experience in this because I've currently living in a state with 24%, and the last state that I lived in was 11%. So I've felt it myself, and yeah, as wonderful as it was living in California, um, it's tough. I mean, seeing how much is going out to just property taxes and others, that's why I moved back. Well, it's one of the reasons why I moved back East Coast to South Carolina at 24%. McKenna, let's get your thoughts because you've lived in California at 11% and South Carolina at 24%. And although you're new to uh, I don't want to call it the corporate world, but the daily job compared to living in Guatemala. Do you have any thoughts on that? On the just on the sacrifice, living in Southern California, whether it be Orange County, LA, or San Diego, wherever. Do you have
Mhm.
any thoughts on the sacrifice that it takes to live in a place like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can add really much of value, but more in just the sense that I understand why people make that sacrifice because obviously it's a very expensive place to live. However, it's an amazing place to live. I love where we lived in California. I loved it so much. That was definitely one of my favorite places that we've ever been. And so I understand like the idea behind people saying, you know what, this is a lot and it costs a lot, but we want to stay here because of how great it is.
Hmm. Not that I want to turn it political, but did you see the headline where New York City's running out of revenue to keep up?
Nope.
Ron,
Yeah.
we
I
should
think of
we
New
should
York.
we should
I put it in the same,
go ahead.
bucket as California. So there you go. You see where gas in California now is over $6 a gallon.
Oof.
Yeah, I yeah I read somewhere it was up to 8, but I think that's fake.
I bet you can. I bet you can find 8. It's I mean, because there's you know pricing is not homogeneous there. You can definitely find places that are 8.
Right.
Yeah. But
Alrighty.
McKenna, if I'm
Moving
understanding you,
on.
hold on. I think if I'm understanding you right, McKenna, you can understand paying a lifestyle tax if you're going to be in like Malibu or San Francisco or New York or like you're drawn to that feeling. you can understand why it'd be worth it,
Hmm.
or whatever it happens to be. But
Yeah.
all things else being equal, David, your point of having more residual income, some breathing room is much better than being fully stretched out. Unless, if you pay a tax to live in those places, I mean, just a general cost of living tax to live there, is it worth it to you for that tax? Is it worth it if you live on the beach in San Diego to pay all the high cost of living to be able to see the ocean every day? And if it is, then you pay it, and if it's not, then it's not worth it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really think it
Yeah,
just
it probably depends
depends.
on what your
I was just gonna say, I think it
depends
depends
on
on.
your personal situation and what your income is versus what your outgoing is, you know.
Sure.
To some people, it's worth it. To some people, it's not. And I think that's
Yeah.
just kind of up to the individual.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think we got this.
All right. Rapid fire topics. Let's try to hit these at no more than 4 minutes each, 3 minutes each. Our first one, I think we've known this for a while, Ron. I didn't read the article or the research behind this one, but work from home is here to stay. I don't think that's a headline now,
Yeah, and McKenna, I
or
love the
is it?
picture. Let me frame it up by going through the data quickly, and then I'll get your guys' feedback. And I know McKenna actually has some thoughts on this. So you can see up until 2019, roughly 55% of people work from home, and then during the pandemic, it spiked up to 60%, and now it's dropped back down to around 26%, something like that. So we're at 26%. And I think that so let's keep going. So I'm going to show you some other data. This is hold on before we go to the next data. Hold on, go back before we go there. Dave, what do you think about that? What do you guys think about this right
I'm
here?
actually that top number is 60%. I'm actually surprised that it wasn't higher than that.
You got to remember, a lot of people had to report to work. You work at a grocery store, you got to go to work. You work at Starbucks, so it includes all of those people. If you're a trash collection, you
Yeah,
got to go to
true.
work. If you're an auto mechanic, you got to go to work.
Hospitals.
Yeah, right. So that includes all those people.
True.
All right, McKenna, you got any
But
thought about this?
that was my only thought.
Nope, she's going to change slides. All right, now let's look at some of the insights on this. So here's current work for days. Here's a current amount of days work from home. So 61% of people don't get to work at home at all. 7.3% do 1 day, 9% 2 days, 5.7% 3 days, roughly 3% 4 days, and 13.5 work at home all the time. And David, that number, those are interesting. But the next chart is more interesting to me, and that's how many days do you want
Wait,
to work at home?
is that current?
Yeah, current. Yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely current. So this is the same
Oh,
thing. Now this is how many days do you want to work at home? Almost 30% of people say they never want to work at home. Like no. Now, do you think those are the ultra, productive? Do you think it's the ones with 3 little kids screaming at home? I don't know. You'd think that'd be higher. But about 9% of people want to work at home 1 day a week. 16% want to work at home for 2 days a week. 12% 3 days. 6% want 4 days, and almost 30% want to work home every day. And David, so most people have gone to a hybrid. In the article, they talk about hybrid. It's 3 days a week in the office. Which 3 days do you think people pick?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They don't want to come in on Monday
Yeah.
or Friday at all. And and people say, "Oh my gosh, productivity is so much better now. Everybody works from home." But you know what's interesting? This is almost tangential. It's totally changed everything. The restaurants no longer have happy hour at 5 o'clock. They have it earlier because now their top seating is 5 o'clock. Because people are the most popular time in a restaurant is now 5 to 6, not 7 and 8. It's earlier. And the same thing with movie theaters. Movie theaters are now booked at the 5 o'clock showing, and they're now stopping. They're starting to not do shows after 9 o'clock, after 10 o'clock, because people are going out earlier. Because even though they're working from home, they're figuring out how to get out of the house earlier and earlier every day.
So does that, and I'm sure there's a handful of reasons for that, but does that heavily point to the fact that people just aren't working the number of hours, or are they getting up earlier and finishing earlier, or just a mixture of a number of variables?
My take, and David, this is going to be opinionated, and I'll apologize up front. During the pandemic, when we were locked in our houses, work was an escape. I mean, you loved working, and then what we did, we were so busy. You literally worked. I wouldn't be unusual work 100 hours a week. You'd wake up in your pajamas and work all day long, and you just it was harvest, 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 and so productivity was through the roof. But as places started to open up again, productivity dropped. And now productivity at home, I think studies are showing, is less than it is at the office. This is one of the reasons why companies want people to go back to the office. And so I think we are being less productive. Now we're being more productive in life because I can take a break and go fold the laundry or feed the dog or walk the dog, and I can meet my wife at the movies at 3:30. We're having a better life, but I don't know if we're more productive now.
Yeah. I mean, is that coming from your personal experience? Because, you've been a very successful person, and typically you don't become a successful person if you're not hard worker, if you're not habitual, if you're not dedicated, and so on. But not everyone has that same dedication and passion for work that you have. So were you speaking from personal experience of how you loved working from home, and you were very productive? Because that's not everyone's personal
I
case.
no, no, David, I didn't work from home. For the
Mm.
most part, I
At
worked in the
all?
office the entire
Well,
time.
you did early on, but yeah.
No, no, I worked at Loan Depot. When I worked at Loan Depot, I showed up every single day. Now, I was the only one in the office, so it wasn't all that heroic, and my office was a couple miles from my house, but I showed up every day, 100%. And I worked every day I
You just
could at
felt like you could be
H-E-B.
more productive?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, much more productive in an office environment, and I'm more focused,
Mm.
but that's just me. I'm not putting judgments on other people.
Yeah, you are.
Okay,
I can
let's get McKenna's view, and then let's move on. McKenna, what do you think about this whole work from home?
I mean, I love working from home. For me, it's great. But I'm
Have you worked in?
also,
you've had one you've had one office job, at a mortgage company, and you've had a coffee job, and then your time in Guatemala kinda doesn't count. That was very unique.
hmm yeah, I mean, I would 100% say that I prefer working from home, but I also like my job here. So, I mean, I liked my previous jobs, but I do very much enjoy this job. But I do really enjoy the working from home perspective. But I've always been a homebody. I always enjoy being in my comfort zone. And so I'm not like as exhausted whenever I'm done because I haven't been out. I haven't been forced to, make small talk with people. So I very much enjoy it.
All right.
Probably a probably a huge difference, and we'll move on, but probably a huge difference when you either own a company, you're an executive, or in your some kind of senior leadership position where you just feel like, with right or wrong, true or false, whether you feel like the synergies that you get from face to face is just, is irreplaceable.
Yeah, and David, I know we're super long, but I'll tell you, when I work from home, even with you know, my best efforts as well as Belinda's best efforts, inevitably, Belinda will have to run an errand. She goes, "Hey, the gardener is coming. Can you let him in?" Or, "Hey, this is happening. Can you do this?" Or, "Hey, can you help with?" I mean, inevitable. It happens all day long. You're like, that doesn't happen if you're sitting in your office, at work. But anyway, we got this. Let's go on. David, here's what I suggest. We're running super long. Let's skip our third rapid fire and maybe even skip the tech tip, and let's just do the marathon as our last topic.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and I really like this next topic. I would maybe made it the topic. So I don't know if you were following this, David. I am certainly following it. A runner from Kenya, his name's Swawi. He just broke the 2 hour barrier. He came in at a minute 59:30, shattered the world record. And it was just an incredible, incredible performance. And what's interesting, now the marathoners have been chasing this 2 hour mark for a long time, and they knew it would be broken. They didn't think it'd be broke for like another 10 years. And he broke it on a slow course. It was in London. London's considered a slower marathon course compared to Berlin or Chicago, which are both considered very, very fast. But not only did he break it, the guy that came in second was 10 seconds behind him and also broke the 2-hour mark. And I think New Balance or someone had $1 million prize if you broke the 2-hour mark. And so the poor guy that broke the 2-hour mark was second sucks. I'm so bad. Sorry for him. But here's the thing. And by the way, Swawi, and it's S-A-W-E. I'm saying his name wrong, so I apologize if I offend anybody. But this is only his fourth race. This is his fourth race. He's won all 4 races, and he breaks the 2-hour limit. But the guy that came in second, it was his first race. I mean, how crazy is that, right? But do you want to know some statistics from this? This is so crazy. So he on average, his average mile was something like 4 minutes and 33 seconds. 4 minutes and 33 seconds for 26 miles. His fastest mile was like 4:10. Crazy. Wow. The second thing, his average speed, the thing about driving, was 13.16 miles per hour. He was running at 13 miles per hour. I can't even cycle that fast, honestly. If you were going to put it into a 100-yard dash, just to put it in perspective, it's a 15-second 100-yard dash ran for 26 miles. Like 15-second 100-yard dashes, you win in high school with that. I mean, it's crazy. Or if you look at like the quarter mile run, the quarter mile is 67 seconds, every quarter mile, 67 seconds, right? Now, David, here's the crazy thing. He ran the second half of the race faster than the first half. And the second half of the race is considered much more difficult. It's hillier, it's harder, right? And that's usually an indication that either he misran the race or he had incredible capacity to run faster. And so he thinks he can run significantly faster than this world record. He beat the world record by 65 seconds, like not by a little bit, but by a lot, right? And he thinks he might be able to go under hour 58, and so does his coach. But that all that's interesting. I mean, it's incredible when you see a performance like that. But David, what's really fascinating is what I like to look at is how did he do it? And he had 4 breakthroughs to be able to do this, because a lot of times when you set, when you show humanity that they can do something they never believed possible, you didn't just get incrementally better. You had to break the whole thing and redo it. Like, you innovated. Well, he innovated like crazy in 4 areas. First was his physical training. He put in more miles than the traditional marathoner. He did 125 miles a week, 30 kilometers a day, which was unusual. He would do 2 workouts a day some days. He was on a 10-day training cycle. Like, one day would be long distance, the next day would be hills, the next day would be sprints. So he did this 10-day cycle to let his body recover better, but he put in a lot more distance. And so he built a much bigger engine. And that was different than what typical Kenyan runners train. And he revolutionized how he trained. And he trained a lot more, which was interesting. The second thing, and this is the thing I think is most fascinating, he had to change his body's physiology to be able to run the race. And here's what happens, Dave. When you're running a marathon, all the blood in your body is going to your muscles. They're trying to give your muscles oxygen and food, right? And so what happens is you can't eat, right? Because you don't have enough blood in your stomach to digest food. And that's one of the biggest challenges in running a marathon. You get this massive calorie deficit and you hit a wall. And so they've always said, look, the max carbohydrates is what you need to fuel your body in a race is around 30 or 40 for most humans. And he was able to re-engineer his body to do 115 an hour, like triple what everybody else does. So he's able to feed his body during the race. And people are like, how in the world did they do that? He trained for a year on changing the physiology of his stomach, on how it can digest food. And then he worked with a company, a nutrition company, to get a different type of serum so that the carbohydrates could pass through his stomach without a lot of digestion into the intestines to be absorbed. And that's how he was able to do these 115 calories. But it took him 115 carbohydrates. It took him a year to do that. Like crazy, right? So he did all this stuff that was totally different. The third thing he did, and then the third thing is, which is very interesting, David. This is part of what we do, is the technology in running has completely changed. You got technology in running. What are technology like Vaseline? Like what do you do? But the shoe technology has radically changed, and so in shoes they measure how much energy does a shoe return to you? Like you step down, how much spring is in it? They track energy a bunch of different ways in the shoe, and this was the most efficient energy shoe. And there's a bunch of stats that you don't care about, but it essentially made running 4% more efficient in these shoes. They're also the lightest shoes. They're 30% lighter than any shoe made before. And what's interesting is the winner, the set runner second up, and the female winner all wore these shoes. They sold out the shoes like a minute after he finished. Like tens of thousands of shoes they sold in like a minute.
What brand? What brand was it?
It's Adidas. Yeah, it's Adidas. I'll look up the name is incredible. It's the Adidas Pro Evo 3s. Pro Evo 3. It's 97 grams for a 9-foot, I think, shoe. But so, and then finally, you know what he did different? He got tested, like he was tested something like every other week for drugs, because the marathon is plagued with doping, and he wanted to do it right. So he got tested 25 times, crazy. So anyway, the question I have, David, is, okay, this guy just broke records. How does that apply to us, right? How does that apply to what you do? Or how does it apply to somebody that's in mortgages? What can you learn from how he ran that race? And how, if you wanted to be the best in your business, what could you do?
That's a question for me.
Yeah.
Well, question back and then I'll answer it. What size team did he have? How many support members did he have? Trainers and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and David, that's such a good thing because he has a world-class team. But it's not the world-class team. And by the way, he changed teams, and he's pretty young. One of his mentors led him to the top trainer guy in the world, and that guy's a total mad scientist, and he figured out the training regimen and the nutrition and sleep and all this stuff, right? But the team, it's not that the team's that big. It's that he trusted the team, and he followed he submitted to the process, and he just did what they said, and he worked with them, which is more important than the size of the team. But he has a big team. I mean, and Adidas is all in on the guy.
Right. So I think that answers kind of the question that I had that made me ask that. Because obviously for him to break that world record in something like a marathon takes although you did say he's only been doing it for 4 years,
No,
which
four,
is
right?
probably the most shock. What's
Yeah,
that?
this is only his fourth competitive marathon.
Holy cow. Even crazier. Over what length of time?
He ran, he ran his first marathon. He won the Valencia in 2024. He ran 2:02.05, and he won.
Right. So I mean, he's an extreme example of achieving excellence. He has achieved human excellence, but he's got a team around him, and he trusted that team, and he probably couldn't have gotten there without having that team. And so I think the lesson for me is surrounding yourself with people who are passionate, surrounding yourself with people who achieve excellence, who want to better themselves. And I think that's a lesson for me, because you'll never see, or maybe you will, but you'll rarely see people who achieve that kind of notoriety without surrounding themselves with the best people,
Yeah. David, I have an article, you can't see this, but article on LinkedIn, which I'm publishing on Sunday, and it talks about this, but it also talks about, if you were in a mortgage, how could you be world class? Like what do you have to focus on? What every single detail could you be to match that type of performance? And so if you're watching this and you're interested, I go into quite a depth, all the details you might be able to focus on that would make a difference. Because with him, it wasn't one thing; it was everything. Same thing that you would want to do
every time I see a top loan officer post on social media, either when they make President's Club or when they close out the year, they are so typically speaking, not all the time, but typically speaking, so very humble. And the first thing they do is to thank the people around them, like they're on the stage winning an Oscar. You're like, thank you to my assistant, to my agent, to my and loan officers are the same way. Typically, when they've reached, they do 200 million in a year or 150, whatever the number is. They're typically, I couldn't do it without my process, or I couldn't do it without this person and that person. That's the biggest thing, and they're being very humble because they're friggin' rock stars themselves. To a Sean Herrero that does 200 million, or however much he's doing these days, 250 million. He's a rock star himself, but I see him post all the time. I think I saw him post just the other day where he was highlighting his team, his processor, and other people. So yeah, that's what sticks out to me.
Sean's a unique beast too because he has a small team. It's incredible how productive his
Yeah,
team
yeah,
is. Yeah,
right.
and then
Yeah, I
you
picked
know if you
up on
look at
that as well.
if you look at somebody like Sean Benosian who does $1 billion, that guy, him or his team obsess over every single thing. I guarantee you. That's what made them great. Now he also focuses on the most important things, but someone on his team is focusing on everything. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I need
yeah.
to do. I'd like to look up kind of him a little bit more. I've known about him for years, but he's come up in conversations recently, and obviously, what, a year ago, a year and a half ago, where he became president, right? Not
President,
CEO, president of Rate.
he's a
President of
good
Rate.
guy.
Yeah,
He's
he
a really good guy.
seems like a
I mean,
very impressive individual.
he is a good dude. And David, you know what? We went over on time. What we could have been interesting to talk about is some of the people that broke records. To show us what was possible in the mortgage space. Whether it was the first person to do $100 million, I don't know exactly who that is. Might have been Jeff Lake. It could have been Barry Beebe, or is the first person to $200 million, which I think was actually John Bianchi. The first person to do $1 billion, which was Sean. All those people showing us what's possible. Helps lift the whole group.
Yeah.
Producer
Anyway,
McKenna,
with
you
that,
our time is up. She's putting her running shoes on right now.
what was that question?
I said, producer McKenna, our time's up. And then I said she's probably putting her running shoes
Yeah.
on.
Absolutely not.
All right.
I hate running.
I've still got a little bit of drink left, so we'll end with a cheers. So cheers to you, Ron. Cheers, McKenna.
Cheers to you.
Thanks for joining us. I won't give a long outro. See you next week. Thanks for joining.